Welcome back to the Christian Bitcoin podcast. We have another Tim and Jim episode. This will be a little bit of a shorter one, but we felt like we wanted to address some comments that Michael Saylor made on what Bitcoin did. Not his attitude towards Danny, but his comments about Christianity towards the end. So take it away, Tim.
Yeah, so there was a podcast episode that came out this week with Danny, what's his name, on what Bitcoin did. Interviewing Michael Saylor, who, I don't know what his official title is, chairman or something like that, of Strategy. What is it? Is he the biggest private holder of Bitcoin? Biggest private company holding Bitcoin?
Strategy has the most Bitcoin of any company.
Okay, he has a lot of Bitcoin. His company has a lot of Bitcoin also. Way more than I think he does personally. But anyways, he's on this kind of well-known Bitcoin podcast, and they were talking about Bitcoin companies doing something similar to what he's doing. And the host, very nice English Danny, was asking what I thought were some pretty gentle questions about, how do you respond to people that are really upset that this has blown up in a lot of people's faces and it didn't make them all the money they thought they were going to make right away? And why is Bitcoin's price not at $1 gazillion like everyone thought it was going to be right now? And Michael Saylor responded in a pretty abrasive, direct way, to put it nicely. But anyways, a lot of people were like, whoa, what's wrong with him? Why is he being so mean to him? He's just being a jerk. What's going on? Trying to read between the lines of what was going on psychologically, and was there something going on between them? And maybe it's this guy, maybe it's that guy. I don't know. He was obviously irritated and quite prickly, but as far as why was he doing it, I don't know. But we wanted to talk mainly about a bunch of comments he was making towards the end of this podcast about kind of Bitcoin's role in spreading freedom. I mean, he kind of seems to really view what he's doing as this kind of civilizationally important expanding of economic freedom and wealth to the world through what his company is doing. And he kind of went on this rant about Christianity and the church and religion in general. I mean, he kind of started with kind of rolling his eyes at the people on Easter Island about halfway through the interview, about how they built these stupid statues because they thought the gods were going to help them or something, and kind of just dismissing it like, oh, they didn't focus on real economic activity, and there goes your society. But then at the end, he just kind of went on this whole rant about how the church and the state have never been separated, and the church is just kind of a guise for power grabs, and it's just a guise for political actors to manipulate people and delude them into handing over lots of power and control and wealth. And I think that the subtext was Bitcoin allows us to overcome that. And that, it's interesting. I mean, he was kind of taking a flamethrower to a lot of things, taking a flamethrower to religion, Christianity, specifically the Protestant Reformation, because he doesn't like when people say that, oh, this is when we separated the state from the church, and therefore Bitcoin is when we separate state from money. He doesn't think that about the Reformation, and he poo-pooed it and blew it off. But then also, he seems to think that, Bitcoin is kind of this next epoch when we can finally all live to our heart's content and all become mega wealthy, and we'll just fix everything. So I don't know. We just wanted to chat about that a little bit. Not the first time by any means that I've heard this kind of idea and this kind of attitude, especially in kind of libertarian freedom circles. But yeah, this is a very common critique of religion and of Christianity, that it's just a power grab. It's this kind of posture of suspicion that, the three horsemen of the suspicious apocalypse, Karl Marx, Friedrich Nietzsche, what's his name? Psychotherapy.
Carl Jung.
No. Who's before him? I'm spacing out on his name. Sigmund Freud.
Yeah.
Kind of different, these three 19th century thinkers who have had a huge impact on our society and are kind of the grand poobahs of postmodernism as we know it today, to where everything, kind of suspect everything and question everything. Karl Marx, saying, he was, famously very anti-religious, anti-Christian, viewed religion infamously as the opiate of the masses to keep the man down and to keep the capitalists on top sucking their blood. And so, for Karl Marx, everything can be boiled down to kind of economics. And interestingly, a lot of libertarians agree with Karl Marx about a lot of things, that there are these classes. They just kind of differ with him in terms of which ones are the bad guys. So Karl Marx, kind of from this economic angle, you can boil everything down to economics and be suspicious of how things look. Friedrich Nietzsche, German philosopher, 19th century, also very suspicious of Christianity as what he calls the slave morality. It's a religion of weak people, and it drew us away for 2,000 years away from the beauty and the strength of Greek and Roman culture. And now, we all just believe that it's a nice thing and a good thing to be humble and lowly and weak, and we all want to take care of the poor, and we should get away from that and go back to focusing on strength and power and whatever it takes. And then you have Sigmund Freud, kind of more of this kind of psychotherapeutic suspicion that what looks nice on the outside underneath is actually all kinds of relational and sexual dysfunction, and everyone actually wants to, sleep with their mom and kill their dad and all these things. So put all these guys together, and you end up with a world like we're living in today, where there is just profound skepticism about, can you even know what the truth is? People who claim to have the truth are immediately viewed suspiciously. Is there even really any ultimate reality out there? Again, does Michael Saylor actually think any of that? I don't think so. But that kind of posture of religion goes into the category of power grab. That is cut from this same cloth. And yeah, there was this, I think, kind of this attitude that the Enlightenment and kind of what came out of it is what got us on the right track in terms of individual personal freedom and rationality. Again, you and I have been talking about this a lot. I heard this a lot with Michael Saylor, this heavy emphasis on things being rational, on engineering solutions to all problems, and that Bitcoin is, this great engineering invention that will fix all kinds of problems. Again, I like Bitcoin. I think it's great. I think it's going to really make the world a better place. I think it reflects God and his desires for human interactions in a beautiful way. But man, I get the heebie-jeebies when people start kind of elevating it to the kind of be-all and end-all. And especially when you are talking so much about life effectively being all about economic wealth and prosperity, and that religion is just kind of a big drag on what really matters. Because, religion is not ever just religion. It's never just kind of religious institutions or religious rituals. In many ways, religion is everything. Religion is culture. Religion is society. And I'm not just talking about Christianity. I'm talking about all kinds of religion. And again, he kind of seemed to think that we can finally separate religion and state. And there was an element of truth to what he was saying, that you can't ever totally separate state and religion. There are some important kind of conceptual and procedural and institutional ways those things can be separated that I think the Reformation actually was aiming for in a good way, that the church had lost its way on. But there is an element of truth to it, that there's no society that doesn't have a God at the center of it. Our God happens to be, in America, in the modern West, happens to be a very merciless, weak God, the God of personal fulfillment, the God of consumption, the God of capitalism, the God of economic prosperity, which is, a very weak God and is very unsatisfying to many people. And so, there's a lot of bad effects of that. And so, the real question is not, are you going to have a God at the center of your society? The question is, which God is at the center of your society and everything that flows out of that. So in that sense, he's right. But yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was this pretty shallow, immature dismissal of religion and, just saying things that are just obviously not true. He said, he was kind of ranting about, well, Martin Luther thought God was German, and so therefore you had to have the Bible in German so that God could actually talk to you. And it's like, Michael Saylor, if you're listening to this, just go read Martin Luther. Like, it's all there. He wrote a lot of stuff. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, did the princes of Europe in the 15 and 1600s selfishly take advantage of these religious debates and divisions? Yes, they did. Were all of these princes and rulers totally interested in God and in recovering the gospel and in returning to the scriptures as not the only, but the ultimate authority over the world and over the church. No, they were not all perfectly innocent in doing that, and some of them were selfish. But it's a lot more complicated than he was saying. It's just kind of this simple dismissal. I mean, in the big bad religious wars of the 17th century, you had Catholics fighting Catholics, and you also had Protestants fighting Protestants. It was more complicated than are you a Protestant or are you a Catholic? The Reformation was in part not just religious. There was a political element to it. There was big political issues brewing in Western society for centuries before the Reformation, and this was in part a correcting if you are more positive about it, or a aberration if you are very negative about it, of things that were already going on for a long time. It wasn't something that you can just say, oh, the Reformation caused this, or the Reformation didn't fix anything. But in any case, I don't know, it just troubles me and frustrates me some, and kind of leaves me shaking my head a little bit to hear somebody who's obviously so brilliant and so smart about so many things to so simplistically dismiss not just Christianity, but just the value and the meaning of religion in general for human society and human history and human culture. I mean, as Christians, we would say, yeah, of course, people's religion shows up in all kinds of ways because God has revealed himself to everybody. He is revealing himself to them all the time. We know he's there. His law is written on our heart. Of course, people are going to express some level of interest in him and desire for him in all kinds of ways, usually weird, wacky, sinful ways, because we are sinful and we are ultimately running away from him until he pursues us and grabs hold of us. But, it's like, I think most philosophers, most religious teachers, most authority figures in history would have rightly and easily understood that there is a lot more to life than wealth and economic value, and that the world's, again, not just within the Christian tradition, but from all of these traditions throughout the world where God has revealed himself through human learning and understanding, the world's best thinkers and writers and poets and artists have easily seen and understood that a life lived merely for wealth is a very shallow, empty life, and that there is something much more about who we are and why we're here than getting the most amount of Bitcoin or the most amount of dollars in your bank account as you possibly can before you die.
Saylor was mostly talking about Christianity, but there is part of me that wonders what it would be like to talk with him about religion in general.
Right.
Like if it would be similar to a Bitcoin maximalist talking to a no-coiner, and then they start talking about all these altcoins, muddying the waters.
Right.
Obviously, there's lots of religions in the world. And as Christians, we sort of feel like, Christianity is the way,
right.
Obviously.
Yeah, and he kind of had this whole thing too about like, oh, barbarians, it's just this word of you're just someone other than me, and just because you speak a different language, I have to come up with some excuse of why I can kill you and take your stuff. Yeah, and have a lot of people done that kind of thing all through history? Of course. A lot of Christians have done that too, unfortunately. But, the subtext there was, well, we're all really the same and we're all one, and everything. This is all just one big excuse to rob each other. And in the background, he's saying Bitcoin is how we solve this. There is some truth to what he's saying, and of course, we all should hate religious hypocrisy. But it's also like, not all cultures are the same, and not all religions are the same, and not all gods are the same, and you can't just kind of lump them all together and say, well, it's all the same, and we're all the same, and we're all just kind of arguing over nothing. And I'm so smart. I know so much that I know it's all the same thing. And it's like, okay, did the Spanish do some bad things when they took over Mexico and they conquered the Aztecs? Yeah, they did some bad things. But they rightly recognize that, wow, they're sacrificing a lot of humans here to some really wicked gods. We got to put a stop to this. This is really bad. That was really, really bad. And it shouldn't be controversial to say that and to recognize that. Were the British doing some really bad things in India that they shouldn't have done, especially in the name of Christ? Yeah, they did some really bad things they shouldn't have done. And you can find all kinds of things to criticize about British colonialism. But when they get there and they realize well, these people are burning their widows. When a guy dies, you have to set his widow on fire. And this is their religion. And they say, you can't do this anymore. Sorry, this isn't good. You can't just lump everything together and say, it's all the same. No, it's not all the same. Some things are less bad than others, but some things are a lot worse than others. And it's not just names. It's not just, I just call this a different religion and therefore I'm pretending like it's worse. No, it's actually objectively a lot worse to set a live woman on fire or to commit, mass human sacrifice for the sake of your demonic gods than it is to, do all kinds of other things. So I don't know. It's just, again, he's brilliant. He's obviously very smart, but it was on the level, I think, of kind of the obnoxious college freshman who's taking his first philosophy class and kind of like, okay, you've heard a little bit and you think you kind of know everything, but man, you're really just kind of showing that you don't really know what you're talking about.
In a lot of ways, he definitely has a very machine mindset.
Right.
I promise we'll go into this more later in our What We're Reading series, Paul Kingsnorth's Against the Machine. But I was thinking back to your comments about Nietzsche and how we need to get back to the Romans and the Greeks and how a lot of Bitcoin maxis kind of almost worship the Stoics and Marcus Aurelius.
Right.
I'm thinking of the Bible. Pontius Pilate's like, what is truth?
Right.
And the Michael Saylor machine mindset is, well, we have an answer now. It's the immutable Bitcoin blockchain.
Right.
There's an engineering solution to that. This is truth. There's just part of me that wonders, as much as I love Bitcoin, is it really just one of these kind of pure manifestations of the machine?
Right.
And is there a way that we can redeem it if it is, or use it against the machine?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think because again, a lot of people were going all around about, oh, wow, why did he get so wigged out on the podcast host? And why was he being so like aggressive and talking over him and talking past him? And one thing that struck me was Michael Saylor's repeated expression of frustration with Bitcoiners in the Bitcoin community. He kept saying that they just eat their young. They eat their young. They all are so divided. And he just kind of seemed like he was throwing his hands up, like, what are you guys all so wigged out about? We don't need to be having these arguments. You don't need to be criticizing me so much. You don't need to be criticizing all these other companies copying me so much. And it's like a part of me wondered, again, I don't know, but a part of me wondered, is somebody, the guy literally owns hope.com. When you go to hope.com, it doesn't show you, John 3:16. It shows you MicroStrategy, and here's what Bitcoin is. The guy thinks that apparently thinks it's going to fix just about everything, and it's this, kind of the next step we need to get to like what life is all about. But as he was getting all frustrated about Bitcoiners and feeling like they're unfairly criticizing him and they're impatient, it's like, to me, it's like, I don't know, this kind of sounds like a lot of the stuff you deal with in a church. And it's like, I'm not surprised by that as a pastor. It's like even Christians are petty and divided and get wigged out over things and are impatient. And I was like, is part of this kind of Michael Saylor crashing into the hard reality that even Bitcoiners are sinful, but on paper he thinks it should kind of lead us all into this wonderful place of harmony and unity and wholeness? And it's like, yeah, sorry, Michael Saylor, welcome to the human heart. Even the Bitcoiners can be unfair and wrong and divided, and this is not going to fix all kinds of problems.
100%. I hope Saylor comes to know the Lord. If he doesn't,
Michael Saylor, if you're listening to this, contact us. We will point you to therealhope.com.